Hi students, I just want to give you a little bit of an overview about searching for literature and referencing. I had a couple of questions come up in our recent shoots, and it also reminded me of some things I've seen in the past. And there's just a few tips and tricks I'd like to give you that I think will help you a lot with making your life easier when it comes to searching for literature. So the first exercise I'm going to give you is one where I'm going to show you a sentence and ask you to think about what's wrong with it. So consider at this point that you might want to pause the recording so you can have a little bit of a think about this sentence and decide for yourself before I then go through and explain what I think is wrong. So here we go. So the sentence is quantification with RT-PCR is technically challenging and not widely applied. And the reference is Sinclair from 1997. So hopefully you've spotted a couple of things wrong with this sentence by now. First of all, RT-PCR is widely, definitely used these days. So the sentence itself is factually incorrect. And the reason for that is that this student has chosen an out-of-date reference. That statement would probably have been true at the time that this paper was published in 1997. So it's really only incorrect now because the referencing is so old. So I often get questions from students that say things like, how current do you want the articles to be? Or, is 5 years old okay? Or does it have to be less than 2 years old? Really, what I want when I'm looking for current references is I want you to be accurate and I want you to be correct. So this particular sentence came from the Scientific Writing 1 assessment pieces from a previous year, and a student has used this as part of their argument for justifying their study. What I definitely don't want you to do is anything like that. So I think you probably think, okay, that's a pretty extreme example. So now I'd like to ask you, in a class of third year science students, what proportion do you think would use references more than 10 years old in an assignment discussing modern diagnostic techniques? When I did this exercise in class, a lot of students said 70%. I think they thought the fact that I had included that in there, that I must be like so horrified. No, it wasn't quite the 70%, but it was half. It was just over half of third year science students, so your level science students. And they had used references more than 10 years old. Now, this led to a lot of that type of sentence that we just saw. And I think that we'll all agree that that's just, it's not accurate. And I definitely will be looking for, um, claims that aren't valid because of out-of-date referencing when I'm marking your assessment piece. So when this first happened, I then went on and asked the students why. I really wanted to know, how are you doing your referencing and what is it that is leading to this situation? Because I think everybody knows that more than 10 years old references is out of date, but yet it was so frequent. And I found out a few things about the way people are referencing that was really leading to this. So a lot of people said that they use something like OneSearch. That's not my preferred way to search for references. So I'm going to show you my preferred way, and then I'll show you how to do it in OneSearch. Some students said they used Google Scholar, and I'm not going to demonstrate that because I actually think that that's much worse. So I'm just not going to do that today at all. Okay, so my preferred way when I'm doing a literature search is to use PubMed. And to find PubMed, that's pretty straightforward. You just type in PubMed into Google and it'll be the first hit there. And we're there at PubMed. What I really like about PubMed is if once you leave the university, you can still continue to use PubMed. And if you're, I like my students to be able to be advocates for science and to educate non-scientists on how to look for references as well. And PubMed is publicly available to everyone. So that's one that I tend to use myself and I encourage my students to use. Also, if you are on the UWA campus, I think, or logged in via the VPN, whenever you find articles, links come up and you can click straight on them and it takes you straight to the article. So it's as convenient as OneSearch, but for me, it has those added benefits. So let's put in a search term now for BCR able. Okay. And so you can see here the hits that you're getting, they're all current, okay? So 2018, 2018, they'll go down and they'll eventually get older, but the most recent ones are shown first. And that's really, really important. Now you might be looking at this and think, well, 20,000 hits, and you're reading these titles and they seem awfully specific. You might not know how to navigate references like this. So there's a couple of tricks I want to show you. One is a link just over here on the left-hand side, the word review. So if you click on review, what that's going to do is cut down your hits significantly. You've only got 3,000 now. And now you are looking at current reviews in the field of CML or BCR able. So this is an excellent starting point. If you want to get a snapshot of any kind of field, use a nice broad search term like that, and then look straight at the reviews and look at the most current ones first. This way you'll know, even if an article is, say, 2 years old or something like that, you'll know whether anything has been published more recently that should be the reference that you're using. So that's always good to start with the most current ones first, so you always know that there's been nothing since that contradicts what you're going to say. The other way, you don't need to do reviews. You might be using original articles, but you can of course use more specific search terms. And for this assessment piece, you likely will. You're going to choose between two methods of diagnosis, and you might want to put those search terms into your field as well. I'm not going to give you any hints on what you should be searching for. That's entirely up to you. But the principle stands. You can still use this system. So if you really prefer to use OneSearch, we can still do the same. We'll search for BCR able there. Now, what we've got in our hits, see the first one here is 2012 and 2003 and 2004. What I found when I ran this tutorial and referencing is a lot of the students were telling me that they would do a search like this and then scroll through pages and pages of hits and, oh, look, here's one that's 2018. They would go looking for the current references. This is, I think, getting it all wrong. Basically, you're not letting the computer do its job. Computers are really good at sorting, and that's what I recommend you do. So over here on the left, you've got sort by. And the first thing I would do here is sort by date newest. Right, now we're looking at 2018. And you, the reader, can skim these titles and find the ones that are most relevant to you. That's easy enough for you to do. And you're the best person to do that because you're writing the assignment. But doing it the other way where OneSearch is showing you what's relevant, and then you have to go searching for what is the most current, that doesn't make much sense because the computer is much, much better at sorting by what's current, and you're the best person to determine what's relevant. So those are my two methods that I want to show you for referencing. And the answer to how current do I want the references in these assessment pieces, I want them current enough that they are accurate and that nothing has been published since that would contradict what you're saying. So in many cases that will be limited to, if not the last 5 years, but even the last 2 years, and it would be rare that you will go any older than that. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with your referencing and will mean that we have much better quality of references when I get your first assessment. Okay.